Good morning, everyone. Today, I will begin by discussing the concepts of public relations and advertising. First, let's take a look at these two fields. Over the last decade, both advertising and public relations have evolved significantly, expanding their reach on a global scale. This transformation aligns with the idea of globalism, a condition where interconnected systems link regions across continents. As we adapt to this more integrated world, the definition of communication has shifted, largely due to the rise of new digital platforms. For instance, consider Facebook, which allows users to share content without restrictions, or Amazon's Kindle app that offers a convenient way to access reading materials online. In our discussion, public relations refers to the strategic management of communication between an organization and its stakeholders. It is all about responding thoughtfully and managing interactions that shape public perception. This process includes activities like tracking, evaluating, influencing, and adjusting the attitudes, opinions, and behaviors of the groups that make up an organization's audience. Now, remember, public relations should not be confused with advertising. While PR is about managing relationships, advertising focuses on generating interest and demand for products by designing persuasive messages and determining the optimal times and channels for delivery. Historically, the evolution of advertising, public relations, and communication has been deeply influenced by technological advancements and the rise of mass media, transforming their methods and increasing their complexity on a global scale. Next, we move on to the origin of public relations and advertising. In ancient times, the first forms of PR and advertising appeared in the Middle East around 3000 BC. Babylonian shop owners began hanging signs outside their shops, while Egyptian merchants were among the first to hire town criers to announce the arrival of ships. Even the walls of ancient Pompeii featured advertisements. By 900 AD, town criers in European cities were actively directing customers to stores. In the 1470s, English booksellers used flyers, bills, and posters to announce new books, and by 1622, advertising had made its debut in English newspapers. To gain a deeper understanding of the history of these fields, let's look at their development in America. After World War II, U.S. public relations practices were exported to Europe, particularly to the United Kingdom. This transfer was facilitated by historical and linguistic ties, as well as the strong military alliance during the war, which led to significant U.S. investments abroad in the post-war period. Although the exact origins of public relations remain unclear, North American PR is widely regarded as both complex and sophisticated. Its strategies, tactics, and cultural assumptions have largely set the standard for contemporary practices around the world. Modern public relations activities are deeply rooted in the specific social, political, and economic frameworks of North America. In North American society, public relations emerged from a philosophical foundation that values freedom of speech and the press. It reflects a social tradition that emphasizes individualism more than many other cultures, and this development is supported by North America's advanced media infrastructure, both technologically and politically. One argument suggests that public relations may be more deeply connected to culture, a complex and sophisticated set of concepts, than marketing or advertising. This makes implementing PR programs based on universal concepts that transcend national boundaries a real challenge. Now, I will move on to discuss the practice of public relations and global advertising. Reflecting on the history of World War II, certain examples of communication stand out. For instance, U.S. government posters designed to inspire patriotism, as well as similar efforts from charitable organizations and NGOs, used posters to advance their messages. Another prominent example is the propaganda crafted by Nazi Minister of Propaganda Paul Joseph Goebbels between 1933 and 1945, which strikingly illustrates how advertising techniques can be used manipulatively. In the business context, the effects of public relations and advertising are both significant and varied. For example, Unilever introduced a skincare line specifically for black women in Brazil, a nation with the second largest black population worldwide, just behind Nigeria. Similarly, Procter & Gamble targeted Hispanic families in the US through advertisements in Spanish-language magazines. Data from 2003 showed that spending on Spanish-language magazines surged by 24% compared to the previous year, far exceeding the 8.6% increase in overall advertising expenditure. These examples demonstrate how tailored PR and advertising efforts can drive business success. Last but not least, we see the role of public relations and advertising in relationship marketing. This approach is valuable not only for businesses building connections with customers and stakeholders but also for governments, NGOs, and charitable organizations. For instance, when Hollywood faced criticism for allegedly promoting violence among children, the industry responded with public service announcements aimed at discouraging such behavior. Similarly, when KFC was accused of animal cruelty in relation to its chicken, the company took steps to address these concerns both in the US and in markets like Taiwan. In the next section, I will introduce you to the concepts of social media and digital advertising. The emergence of social media has empowered consumers to choose with whom they interact, when, and how. Traditionally, advertising focused on paid content while public relations relied on earned media. However, online platforms, especially social media, have blurred these lines. Now, social media sharing and metrics play a crucial role in measuring advertising success, and public relations have expanded to include paid media services. Additionally, the PESO model, standing for paid, earned, shared, and owned media, has evolved, with some experts now referring to it as SOEP, emphasizing the growing impact of shared social media. Digital advertising is growing rapidly and now accounts for about 68% of global ad spending in 2024, a huge jump from the past decade. Companies like Meta, which includes Facebook and Instagram, and Google are leading the space, together controlling around 53% of global digital ad revenue. Facebook's ad revenue, for example, has climbed to over $95 billion per year, surpassing the total ad earnings of all US newspapers combined. For Meta, advertising remains the main source of income, making up roughly 98% of its revenue, while for Google, it accounts for about 78%. In earlier times, advertising and public relations activities were strictly the domain of governments. However, in recent decades, the rise of global and transnational corporations has diminished the influence of nation-states. Today, global advertising is dominated by 6 major players: WPP in London, Omnicom in New York, Publicis Group and Havas in France, Interpublic in New York, and Dentsu in Japan. These industry giants manage vast networks of top-tier agencies and command a significant portion of the world's advertising spending. In 2023, estimates showed WPP leading with over $17 million in revenue, followed by Publicis with $15 million, Omnicom with more than $14 million, Interpublic at around $10 million, Dentsu at $7 million, and Havas at $3 million. The global advertising market, now valued at over $1 trillion, is increasingly driven by digital advertising and data-focused, digital-first strategies. This corporate dominance clearly illustrates how advertising now shapes economies and influences audiences worldwide. I now invite you to form groups and research the 6 largest advertising and PR agencies in the world. Choose a campaign that one of these agencies has done in the past and introduce it to the class. Consider, was it successful, and why? Moving on, let's discuss an important issue raised by the emergence of social media and digital advertising: protecting citizens' rights. As corporations grow more influential, sometimes outpacing nation-states, governments face challenges in protecting their citizens, particularly regarding social media privacy. For example, social media sites like Facebook often use personal information, and it is difficult for governments to regulate them effectively. However, some are fighting back. In 2018, the European Union enacted the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, which requires companies to disclose what data they collect, ensure that users understand, and obtain their permission. This regulation is a significant step to prevent companies from misusing personal information in ads and PR, though it also highlights the ongoing tug-of-war between corporations, governments, and the public. Now, let's explore the big issues affecting advertising and PR today: environmental, population, and social crises, and the need for advertising that contributes to solving these problems. First, consider the challenges posed by these crises. At the beginning of the 21st century, the global population grew faster than ever before. The United Nations Population Fund has noted that it took hundreds of thousands of years to reach 1 billion people, but in just 200 years, the population increased sevenfold. In 2011, the population reached 7 billion, and as of 2024, it is 8.16 billion, growing at about 0.8% per year. In 1993, Kennedy pointed out not only new environmental problems but also a booming population, with significant disparities between rich and poor countries. The proportion of the world's population in wealthier countries dropped from 27% in 1970 to around 16 to 17% in 2024, and as of 2023, about 56% of people, roughly 4.4 billion, live in cities. Furthermore, one of the most challenging changes in the past decade has been the movement of people from poorer countries to the West, driven by poverty and war, along with ongoing political and environmental troubles. By 2024, over 120 million people, including refugees and those forced to leave their homes, have been displaced due to conflict, persecution, climate disasters, and human rights issues. So, what role can PR and advertising play here? Advertisers should not view a growing population solely as more consumers. Meanwhile, PR professionals must consider the challenges that today's diverse global population presents when building relationships with different groups. Both advertising and PR practitioners should focus on problem-solving advertising, using social marketing and PR efforts not just to promote products and services, but to share messages that address real issues. After all, many products might be too expensive for most people or could even be harmful to society and the environment.